Good afternoon. How's everybody today? Good? Well, today we're gonna talk about something that I think all of us struggle with, at least from my experience and my history. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about myself and then kind of jump into an exercise that will hopefully drive you and your organization to another level when it comes to evaluative research, usability testing, and kind of that side of the house. So I thought I would first start out and just give you a little history about me. So I actually started working at a interactive agency, and my first job, this was like right when the web was coming online, and I was working with a lot of ad agencies trying to figure out how do we translate these huge graphic novels into websites and then develop some software. And then I actually went for about a year until Napster happened. So the first time I was put out of a job was September 11th. Nobody wanted to buy a website. So then I jumped to this place called ClevelandHits.com. I was one of the world's first IJs, internet jock. Wore a bag on my head. I was called Unknown IJ. Yeah, it's true. You can look it up. And then this place went out of business because of Napster. So when Napster was launched, all the royalties were owed to the artist, and they were on air for like 4 or 5 years, so they could nowhere pay that. So then I ended up going over to Progressive Insurance, and I was trained in their usability lab. This is really when I feel like I started understanding the power of usability testing and user research, and actually Jeff Janis, who's still there, like 37 years running that lab, actually started UXBA Cleveland. At the time it was called Neopa, so I was one of the first members of that back in the day. And then Insurance.com was created out of, basically Progressive, and this is where this company grew huge and then was sold to someone in California, so I was out of a job again. And then I went over to the Cleveland Institute of Art, and I was in charge of building all of their digital assets online and transforming their organization into digital. In the past, they were accepting all of their applicants were sending in CD-ROMs, believe it or not, back in 2008, and there wasn't anything digital. So transform that organization, and then I've been at Highland Software for the last 7 years, and I was the first titled user experience designer at Highland a few years ago. So I've been down this path of generative research, evaluative research, doing a lot of usability testing, and I've seen some struggles out there. And the number one struggle I see is, how do I do usability testing, and how often can I keep usability testing going? By a raise of hands, how many people here would say you're continually doing usability testing? Got a couple hands. All right. It's a challenge. And the biggest thing I've found is getting people, getting recruits, getting folks to actually volunteer their time. So I wanted to give you some insight into what I've been working on, and hopefully it will help you. So right now I want everyone, if you just for a moment, just close your eyes for a second, just 1 second. I don't want you to fall asleep, but I do want you to just cleanse your mind. And now if you open your eyes, I want you to think in your mind a first impression when you see this logo. Then I'm going to have you continually do this just a couple times here. I'm going to flick through, and I want you just think in your mind when you see this logo. Just in your mind, what are you thinking? Seen this one a lot, right? Seen this one a lot. But there's something you're thinking when you're seeing it. Probably something you're thinking when you see this one. Maybe one more. All right, a lot. Just one more after this. So, all those logos went through your mind. Of the logos that I shared with you, how many, by raise of hands, were fans of most of those? All right. How many people were kind of in the middle? And how many people were like, no way? All right, hand up there. So they're giving you, an impression. And what I anticipate is that there are fans, I would call you fans, of those particular organizations and groups. And it's basically you're willing to keep paying for more things if those companies create them. And you're a fan. So today I want you to think about how your organization, how you can attract fans just like those big organizations and get people to help you and volunteer their time to give feedback to you. That's the challenge I found, is finding people that will actually donate their time. And here's an individual. Does everybody know who this individual is? I'm seeing some hands. Mr. Howard Stern. Now, there's some people that say, I love him. There's some people that say they hate him. But there are some people that, even though they dislike him, still listen to him because they want to know what he's saying. And my point is, there's a lot of different fans. There can be fans that really support the product. There can be fans that may not support the product, but they still are interested to know what's happening. So if you define this fanatic, a fan, you will see that the secondary one is probably the one that you're thinking of most likely, which is, I've got this obsessive interest and enthusiasm for something. And when you start doing that, what happens is you start collecting things. Things just start happening. Like, I really like baseball, and I'm gonna start collecting cards. How many people here collected baseball cards back in the day? See some hands up there. I realized that this is early information architecture, right? You're organizing these by maybe the team, maybe by the position, but in essence, you're a fan. You're collecting things. How did I do a throwback here? See if anybody remembers these. Remember the garbage pail kids? Yeah. We collected these. A lot of them. They're really gross. I had to pick out the ones that weren't totally over the line. But, you're trading these, you're getting these, and then this is still alive today. Believe it or not, Pokemon is still out there. I mean, this is huge. And by the way, this last card made me laugh a lot. Can you see it? UXy? Or Uxie? I was like, what's their superpower?
It depends.
Thank you. I'm glad you got that. But it's, what's challenging about this is that, as a fan, you really love something, and when something changes, I remember back in the day, if we have any heavy metal fans out there, oh my gosh, Metallica cut their hair, they sold out. There's always something when you're a fan. But being a fan means that, you really love something. So my thought to you is, let's turn that around. Let's say we really love our football team. What if we spun it around and said, really love your customer? Be a fan of your customers and think about, how can I get them involved? How can I, collect their trading cards just as well? I got Taylor Jackson here, maybe I need to focus on how I can do a better management of the customers that are willing to share their feedback because they really, really love the product. And that's something that I've been working on for the last 5 years, and then over the last few months I've been formalizing it into a singular UX research program at Highland. And what I found is, fans really are the best participants. And if you think about it, like I said earlier, there are some fans that really love your product, and there are some fans that have to use your product but may not be the #1 fan of it, but they are still interested, if you think about the Howard Stern example. So the first one is that they're really passionate about the product. They want to help, they'll do whatever. There's a large subset of that. There's also, as I said, varying levels of support. So, in the past I've heard, well, if we have all our fans, they're going to tell us everything that's right, and they're just going to keep patting us on the back. Well, that's not necessarily true all the time, and I'll talk about some other methods that I'm doing to ensure that this bias or this impression on research is not happening. And then I think this last one is, it's so true that they're willing to volunteer to improve the thing they use. And they really want to help improve. So they'll volunteer that 30 minutes of time. And that's something that I discovered. I discovered that fans are willing to donate 30 minutes of their time. Most of my tests are remote and moderated, and people will donate 30 minutes of their time because they're doing it from their desk, but that's about it. 30 minutes is the max. But if you think about it, you can get a lot done in that 30 minutes of time, and it's amazing that if people love your product, however you want to define that, they will give that time up. So the challenge, though, is what I keep hearing a lot is I want to do usability testing. I want to do a card sort. I want to do one of these research activities, but I can't find anybody. Well, it's because it's a bottleneck, and I would say the UX bottleneck would be it's figuring out who to recruit, how to find them, schedule appointments, getting them to show up. It's challenging. It really is hard. I mean, I've had to come up with a lot of tactics, and also there's some best practices out there that I want to continue to share with you today. But this is a definite challenge, and this is one of the top things. A couple years ago, I did a talk at the same conference, and I started a whiteboard. I think it was in this same exact room of some of the top reasons why usability testing doesn't happen. And it's generally time, money. Sometimes people don't value UX research, but I think a lot of it is just, I'm not sure how to do it. So my thought was today sharing you some of the things that I've found success with. So Steve Krug, he wrote a couple books, Don't Make Me Think, and what's the rocket one? I'll get up here in a second. But essentially, his whole book is about, you don't have to spend a lot of time. Just get some people. If you have one person, that's a heck of a lot better than nothing. And I agree with that. However, I think in today's society, especially since there's the specialized product seems to be key to where things are going, I'm going to augment this a little bit. I'm going to twist this just a little bit. And what I will say is that I think it's important to go ahead and gather as many users as you can, but then make sure that it's going to match appropriately the research that you have to do at the time. Because I just think as we're gathering research, you have a lot of people in a room when you're conducting these tests, and that if the user isn't totally matching the exact scenario, sometimes they feel like it's a waste of their time. So I want to be careful on the people that I'm selecting, and I'll talk about some of that practice. So the way I think about it is, when I'm going to recruit some participants, I see them in three buckets. I see, number one, I've got employees. So at your company, there's always somebody that you can generally find that will, hey, give me feedback on this. Sit down, give me feedback on the prototype I'm running. That's great. But there's a stat that says that 6%, and this is something that I think is alarming to people, that 6% of the population are technically savvy. So if you're working at a technology company, my thought is there's probably more technically savvy people working there, and going through your prototype may not be the exact preference of user because of the fact that they have some more knowledge when it comes to technology, and you can use their information, but I think you have to be careful with what you get. So that's why you want to go out and you want to grab some customers. So these are going to be our fans, the people that you're going out and you're collecting. But then you also have this category, which I'll call freelancers, which is they're not necessarily their customers, your employees, but you may pay them for their time. They have maybe no relation at all to your product, but you got to go out and pay them. And I'll talk about that too. So you're collecting this pool of participants, and these really are the ones that I've found that I have to pay. Employees, generally I can give them some swag or some candy and they're happy. I can connect with my HR group and they may give me some old swag that they had a couple years ago, we're not using anymore, and you would be amazed how employers are like, this is great. I've got a classic coaster from like 2014, this is awesome. And then customers, they are, once again, they're volunteering their time, they're just happy, they're so happy to get their voice heard and help that they're just happy to be there and help you. And then last, you've got your freelancers that have no connection at all, and you're most likely going to have to give an Amazon gift card or some type of payment. So what what I say is turn these participants into fans. So actually create a database, and this is what I've been doing, is creating a database that I call fans, which to me equal volunteers. So if I can get a group of volunteers, and I know when the last time they tested, how often they're engaging, I can reach back to them, they can refer me to other people in the company, because a lot of times you may work with the admin, and they may be able to refer other people that are either down the chain, up and around. So if you can build this really strong volunteer database, you can instantly, when someone has a prototype and you're ready to test, you can send it out to your group and you will get people back rather quickly. And this has been keeping that usability circle going very strong. So this idea of a volunteer, they're out there, they're freely offering to undertake your task, help you. And what I found is that if you can get a great group of volunteers, it's amazing what can happen, because they'll have a positive experience, they'll tell somebody else, they'll tell another coworker, because when I'm doing the testing, it's one-on-one. It's not group, it's not focus group, and I'll try to make it fun while I'm testing with them. I'm going to put some tasks in there. Maybe I'll give a funny name for their persona they're trying to embody. Like one time I did it, all members of one of the boy bands, and people caught on really quick. Is this in sync? And it's just interesting if you keep it mixed up that they will tell other people. So as you do that, the key here is their incentive is that they really are just being motivated to help. They're being motivated. They want to continually move into it. So if you're trying to run some usability and you want to understand how something is being used, build that volunteer database. So that was it, Rocket Surgery Made Easy. So this book has been a cornerstone for many years about how to get up and running usability testing fast. And it's a chapter in here that I've heard referenced multiple times by many UX professionals. So I would recommend that if you want to just get a quick dive in and there's more information that you're inspired to at this discussion, try that. Has everyone read Rocket Surgery Made Easy? Got a hand up there. How about the Sprint book? Got a couple hands. Because in the Sprint book, they also talk about some quick techniques that you can use, like going up to Craigslist. Yes, it does sound a little creepy, but you can put a post on Craigslist and put a screener up that someone can click on the link, and if they don't fit the criteria, they say, sorry, not today, or they may align, and you'd be amazed, within an hour I had over 100 people that were qualified, and I was able to turn off that study and bring people in. So there is an opportunity to do that, and you can then run all these activities, usability testing, card sorts, interviews. I was really early on in a project, so I even used this to do some generative research. Didn't have a concept yet, brought people in, interviewed them, understood the core of their problem, then I was able to use that information to build some products. So you can even use this to do interviews, and just for $50, someone will come in and talk for an hour. And then also, TreeJack, I'm going to send them somewhere and see if they can find the item. And then even a gorilla test is prime for something like this. So one of the things that I will give you when you're building this volunteer database is check with legal. This is one thing that Steve does cover in his book. There's some legal forms that are in there for the end user to sign. But then also figure out, can you give incentives to your customers? Some organizations you can, some organizations you can't. Most organizations, I'm not allowed to give any incentives to my customer. I can't give them I can't even send them a free wallpaper. There's nothing there. All you can do is give them a pat on the back and send them a nice email afterwards for their time. And then that can also dictate some of the terms for those three audiences. So you've got your employees, you've got your customers, and then you have those freelancers. Even the freelancers, you may want to find out, can I pay them? Am I able to do that? So legal, I put it number one because that's going to help dictate everything else that follows down. And if you don't have a legal team, like I said, the Rocket Surgery Made Easy book has some key tips in there. Also in that sprint book, there's some good nuggets in there that I would recommend. And then don't also forget about usability.gov. There's some good tips on that site as well. The next one is you're going to want to understand how it's going to impact the rest of the company. Because what's going to happen is you could be doing similar testing that another group might be doing. Maybe product management is doing something. Maybe sales has a whole program. Where I am, at Highland, we have a couple programs. We have something that is an advisory group, so I can go out and I can interface with them. We also have some special groups that will enable us to call special verticals together. So if I have a healthcare group or higher education or government, I can bring them in and talk to them. So that's going to get me to some of those customers. So check to see. Maybe your organization already has this. You never know. Because they may be using it for sales purposes, but you may be able to go along. Also, for sales, I've gone along on a trip where they're going out to a customer to talk about training. You can go along with them. And here's the UX guy, UX gal, that's going to go along and observe. So you can actually get some good references there, but I'm there solely to build some relationships with that customer so I can contact them later. Most of the things that I'm doing is establishing a relationship at the time so I can follow up with them later. I'm not trying to run a lot of usability testing in the wild, because what I've found is, number one, if I'm at a conference, it's loud, people are trying to go somewhere else. The second thing is, a lot of times when you're at a location, you can probably get about 5 to 10 minutes, but it may not be enough time to really get any substantial information. But if you can introduce yourself, understand what they're doing, you can get a business card, or better yet, I carry around an iPad with just like a SurveyMonkey, Survey Gizmo type of form that says, hey, would you like to sign up? I've got a volunteer database, and they'll fill it out. It has a couple other pieces of information on there that ask them about what are your interests? What type of things would you like to test in the future? Would you be interested in doing this type of activity? And I'll list them down, and it's got to be quick. It's got to be done within 1 to 2 minutes. But just having that available when you're talking with someone means that you're offloading it to later, not then. And that's been part of the strategy that I've been rolling out that's been really working well, because then I can build up my volunteer database and I'm continually getting it into play. And that's been helping. And then also customer experience. Most organizations now have a customer success team. They're interacting with customers to make sure that, one, they're renewing or they're satisfied. They have relationships already, so why not go talk with them, leverage them, to make sure that the things you're doing aren't going to, one, crisscross with what they're doing, because they may be sending out surveys. What if you want to send a survey out? If I'm a customer, how would you feel if you got 3 surveys in one day from the same company? Are they even talking together? And they're all asking you the same thing. What do you think about a product? You would not be happy. So make sure that you are talking to your other groups and don't work in a bubble. And that's been another thing that takes some legwork, that takes some time, that takes a lot of effort. So think about that. The other one, this is silly, but it's so true. If you don't have concepts, if you're either the sole, because for a while there at Highland I was wearing research, design, and testing, so I was doing everything. So I could create my own concepts, and then I would work with another team member to help test it. Now that I'm doing sole UX research, I need concepts to evaluate with customers. So make sure you have something to put in front of a customer. Because the worst is if they say, yeah, I'd like to look at something, you're like, oh, I don't have anything right now. So make sure that there is something there so that if they do sign up and they are expecting that you're going to contact them in the future, that there is something that you could reach out to them on. And this is something that it seems like, yeah, thanks. But I've seen this many times where you're primed and ready to do some research and then nothing is there. So either you could pivot to another research activity, which I've done, where I said, okay, well, I don't have a concept ready. Maybe I'll run a card sort. Anybody here using Optimal Sort or one of those programs? Got some hands up there? Yeah, those things are great, where I can just put together something really fast and then send the link out to a customer. I just want to keep them involved, keep them engaged, and not disappoint. Because once again, I'm trying to be a fan of them. You know, I've got their baseball card, and I want them to autograph it at the end. The fourth thing is, and this is the one I was just talking about, but this is something that I wanted to dive in more here, because I think when I've done some initial research on the techniques that I'm doing, and what I've found is this is one that I've heard the most fascination with, so I thought I'd spend a few minutes talking about this. But this one here is, you are going out to events. So you're going to go out to, how many people here, their organizations have conferences just for their customers? People have those? Got a couple hands. How many people are going to trade shows? Hands up there. So this is what I started doing. I started going to trade shows. I started going to customer conferences, setting up just a little booth with a concept, and gathering people's names. Now, you're going to have to work with your organization to get approval to do this, but this is what I've found has been highly successful because, one, I'm not trying to do lab testing there. I'm just trying to say, like, hey, we've got this research outfit. If you're interested, I can send you information later. And most people are like, yeah, that sounds great. And also, you got to make your booth a little cool, because you got to do some things. You most likely want to have some swag or something to hand out. So I'll talk about some of the things that I've been doing. But collecting names at these events has been something that I've been doing about 5 years. And it started as a, hey, let's try to test in the wild, and I noticed that that wasn't working. So we ended up doing this, which is, this is something that Highland has something called Community Live, which is our annual user conference. So it's about 2,000 to 3,000 people that come to this conference. And we started out something that we actually called the User Experience Center. And we started testing software. So we had like 6 or 7 different pieces of current software. And people were walking by and, oh, is this the Experience Center? And they sat down like, well, what cool, what do you have to show us? We're like, it's the current software. Well, I've already seen this. You know anything new? No, and they walk away. So luckily that conference, I had a mobile device that someone had asked me. It was like a mobile app that someone asked me, hey, could you use some feedback on it? So I said, well, I got a mobile app, is that new? Yeah. And what happened is, I ended up taking this mobile app. It sounds really crazy. But I had this, like, you know those, in hospitals using to hang those IVs on, you know, those bags? You ever see those things you roll them along with you? Well, I saw one over in a corner at this conference, and I was like, is anybody using that? And they're like, no. So I used that, and I taped a webcam to the top of it, and like I had it over my shoulder, and I was just walking around the conference. People were like, what are you doing? And we're like, oh, I'm getting feedback on this mobile app. Oh, really? Is it new? So I used the camera to like in their hands, and then I ended up like putting like a mirroring 360 on the phone and my computer so I can actually see where they're touching. And like I got all this footage, and they used that. I got back, and it was like, wait a minute. If I started testing just new stuff at conferences, people seem to really like this. So then the next year we rebranded and we called it the R&D Lab. We started wearing lab coats. You know, we had the dry ice, the whole 9 yards, and everybody started coming up and saying, wow, this is amazing. Like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, oh yeah, we're testing. That year we tested only new software. So then we just started getting names like crazy. Like people were giving us their names, and then we decided the third year we're going to do something even different, where we ended up getting that that red carpet rope. We asked the conference, like, do you have any of that? Like, yeah, we got that. They put that out front. We locked the doors, and I got like a bouncer-looking guy to like stand out there, and you couldn't come in the room unless you signed a waiver. You're not allowed to come in. Oh wow, what's going in there? And I would light it like this, right? And I would have music bumping out, so people were like, what's going on in there? And then we got a VIP stamp, and I would actually stamp people's hands when they came out. It was like a club. But we would set up, you could go all the way around the room, and you could check out all the stuff, and then people would want to come through, and they would check everything out. But it was kind of like James Bond Q, where we just had a lot of cool gadgets and things in there. So then, last year, we changed the name, and now we're calling it Highland Labs. And we were out at Lockland this last fall, and we set it up there. But now we've got, we got VR, virtual reality, AR, augmented reality. We had a blockchain demo. We had another mobile app. We're really trying to explore some really out there things, and we gathered a lot of attention, and I was able to gather a lot of names again. Now, you can see it's a little more open air here, but it still gave me the opportunity to talk with someone. They walked through a demo, and I said, hey, if you're interested, did you want to sign up? Now, what was cool is, this is what I was trying to say earlier about Krug, when he was saying, right now, just collect names, and then, it doesn't really matter later. To me, I'm augmenting that a little bit, saying, if someone came up, and they were checking out the VR demo, and they wrote their name down, they want to test out VR, why not contact them later and say, do you want to check out the new VR app? So it gave me the opportunity to actually build a vehicle to specifically target people that are interested in a very specific type of research. And then I could notate in my CRM or whatever you're using to keep track of your customers, the things they like, how often they've tested, their background, all of that. And then one thing that surprisingly happened is, if I get a name here that isn't in our system, it could possibly become a sales lead. So now there's a link between user experience to sales, which now can actually give a jump into adding even more value to what we do. Because a lot of times there's a kind of a disconnect between user experience and how it impacts the rest of the organization. And with this, it's very visible, it's out there, and we're able to inspire. So this has led to some innovations. And now working with Highland Labs and growing this, we're doing more. We worked recently with the Cleveland Museum of Art on a VR demo, and now there's organizations that are actually reaching out to us because of this to get information. So it gives you this opportunity to actually go out there and talk to people, understand their background, and connect with them. So my point is, this whole journey that I've had building this database of volunteers has been very organic. There's been a lot of learning. There's been a lot of opportunity, and what I found is that everyone here has the same chance. If you've got a conference, if there's something you're going to, you can bring one of your concepts. But once again, the rule before this one was you got to have a concept. So you're going to have to go with something. But if you arrive and it's on your laptop and you've got the right legal so that someone comes up and they have to sign off on it, whether it's an NDA and you're fine, you have all the clearance, then you should be able to, no problem, be able to collect some names. If you collect those names, then you can start customizing the research experience for the end user. And once again, if they're volunteers and they really like what you're doing, they're going to help you. They'll do it. So, part of that is, collecting those names, doing that. The fifth one that I had down was just determining some of the tools. So really understanding what are the tools you're going to use to keep track of this. Is it going to be a spreadsheet? Is it a CRM? Are you using, do you have usertesting.com? Are you using, cog tools? What are the things that you're using that you're going to be measuring your recruiting efforts? There are also some automated tools that are out there that will help do some of the recruiting for you. So look into that. I've been experimenting with some of those. But tools are important too. I think you need to do an inventory, because if you're not set up properly, there's no way to do. I guess you could just keep it on a spreadsheet, keep it lo-fi. And then this is something that is straight up out of the Google Sprint book, but the study design. Has anybody done a study design in here? It's your screener, but there's a step-by-step process in this book that will walk you through how to set up a very specific study design. And basically what that means is, who do we want to test with, who do we not want to test with, and what are what's other technical constraints? Do they have to have special subject matter knowledge, things of that nature? So when they're filling out your survey, you're actually getting the right people. So there's a step-by-step process in there, but this is part of the process I think a lot of times we miss, and I think even in Steve Krug's book, the Rocket Science book, it's about just getting names. Just give me your name. However, I can do that at a conference, but once on the back end, I want to determine, are the people that I'm collecting match the people that I'm hoping to put it in front of? And if you have a large database, you can easily do this. So at the end of it though, so when you're starting, you're going to be doing all this early stuff. But once you start growing your database, you need to keep it up to date. That's the challenge. Are you scrubbing it? Do people jump to other companies? So you may be able to interact with your marketing department if they have a very specific procedure to do that, or you can attempt to do that yourself. Also, you want to continue that engagement. So I talked about if you don't have a concept, maybe send them a survey. If you don't, send them a thank you email. Maybe there's a way to just keep them in the loop. That's important. The other one is, this one is really important because there are times you may want to go back to a certain volunteer. How many people use usertesting.com or something like that? A couple of hands. On their site, what I like about that is you can rate the user, the person, the participant that's testing, and you can say, oh, they're 4 out of 5 stars, and they're only 2 stars, and they're not that knowledgeable. Maybe the feedback they're giving isn't completely resonating. And there are some volunteers that really are good at giving you information. So you may want to notate that in here and say, hey, they're really great at giving information on X. And this is the last time they worked there. Worked within your application. This is one I had to learn hard. So I've got a room of people. I actually have an observation room and I have a participant room. So the observation room, I maybe have 10 people in there watching the test live. Or maybe I'm sending out a Zoom link and they're all watching it from their desks, right? What if the person doesn't show up? Now I have all those people that are just waiting around saying, well, what's going on? Why isn't there anybody there? Well, this was a waste of my time. And they may not come back. So some of the observers may not come back. So what I do is, I always make sure I have a floater or somebody available just in case somebody doesn't show up. So on your list, try to designate somebody like that, or a lot of times I'll tag team an employee and say, look, if one of the customers don't show up, can I call you? And I'll make sure that they somehow match. But this is where I do agree with Steve Krug is that at least there's a user that's testing it and I'm keeping people engaged. So make sure you line up a floater. It's really important. If you have to pay them, then you may have to pay them. And then this is where I was saying is freelancers. So I think it's important that if you need an outside perspective, you set aside some budget to do this. But I really think number 11 is the one that causes most organizations to say, I don't know, we don't have any money to pay. We don't have any money to pay people to test our product. Well, if you notice, everything I did up into here, I didn't talk about money until 11. It's all been organic. So that's why I wanted to give you some of those steps so that if you're looking to build your own database of volunteers, you can do that. But this is generally where people start, right here, 11. Well, I guess I got to set aside some money. We don't have any money. I guess I can't use ability test. That's not true. It's part of the mix. You should set this aside, and you should be counterbalancing your research with outside voices. However, it's not the end-all, be-all, and I've actually found a lot of success being able to just counterbalance a mix of freelancers into it with those 3 people. And then this is what I was saying, Steve Krug has, he says recruit loosely, and then I think it's like grade on a curve. And my revision is recruit loosely and match appropriately. So it's like if you're gathering as many people as possible, but you're in your database, you're making sure that when you're setting the test up, you're going to match up the right people per your study design over there. You're getting the right people in the mix so that you're getting the most valuable information back. And these 12 are really the top tips that I believe that there's a lot here. But I think if you can start with those 6 and then just end on those 7, I think you'll have a good group of people that you can get some feedback on. And this is what I'm shooting for. I'm shooting for a group of employees that are interested in helping, a group of customers. You've always got the freelancers that you can pull the string on if you need that. And then you're constantly trying to build this database, this volunteer of fans, to get people engaged. And what I would say is that fans make good participants. Contrary to what you may think, I've found that if I can find a group of people that are really engaged, they want to help out, they're in the mood, you really can get some good feedback. And it's this idea that if you build those relationships, I'm going out to conferences, I'm talking to customers, I'm keeping them engaged, I'm sending them concepts, I'm getting feedback on them, it's going to end up showing in your interface. Because people are going to know that you've been able to figure out what their needs are, reflect that, and it really will help. And what's interesting is people love, I can't tell you how much people love to volunteer their time. I've just been continually enthralled over the last few years of customers that, because you're talking to them and you're engaging with them and you understand, oh, hey, I met you at this conference. Oh, that's great. Hey, I have something that matches with you. Oh, you remember? Yeah, great. And you send them a link. They're online. They're giving you feedback. It's amazing. And the next thing is that, if you want your organization to get aboard, if you start creating this volunteer database, you really can start finding more projects, more and more concepts that are going to happen, that you're going to be able to match these customers' needs, which is amazing. And this last one is kind of a, yeah, I know, but it's true. It's a fact, right? It says at the top of the slide. But it gives you a chance to use usability testing, card sorting, any of those methods to identify more opportunities for improvement. And I don't believe there's ever been a test that I've run, it's not what's going to happen after today, I think there's some wood up here, I'm knocking on wood, that I've run that I haven't found something that has been a great opportunity to find improvement in the interface. So building this volunteer database is going to help you get to the next level. And if you're struggling and you're trying to wonder where is some usability testing, think about creating your own volunteer database and you'll be able to run testing whenever you want. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I went through a lot of information. I felt like there was a lot there. Yes?
Have you found there's a certain amount of time you can use the same person before they get
Yes,
tired of it?
I have actually. So, generally I would say you're going to want to not bring the same person back on the same particular prototype. If you are, I would definitely wait until there's like another version of it, so that then you might be able to do more of a baseline study. So there are some tactics I'll do where if, let's say there's version 1, 3 months go by, and then there's version 2, I may try to bring back one of the same people to keep a common thread, to measure their score, if it's the same exact, particular prototype, to see how do they do the first time compared to this time. Is it more muscle memory, or did they actually, did their task completion go down or up? So I'm actually using it as a baseline. For the most part, though, I'll generally move on because I've got such a large database now, thank heavens, that I can go and bring those people that tested on one thing and put them on something else. Because I've got a lot of projects, so I have the opportunity to, if one person tested on one, I may be able to bring them on to something else. But I definitely try to space it out so that I'm not fatiguing them with too many requests. And especially the other thing I notated in my database is when, let's say higher ed, for example. Higher ed, their semester kicks off in January. I don't want to ask them in January if they want to test anything. Or if they're like a financial firm, they're mostly probably closing the books and opening the books around the end of the year. So I'll try to make sure like there are peak periods that I'm not going to ask them. So I'll try to notate what vertical they're in, because I know they most likely are going to get annoyed if I ask them, like, would you like to volunteer? So I'm trying to take in all like the context of very specifically who they are. So when I reach out to them, they're really excited to help me. Good question. Yes.
Do you have a particular sort of set of language that you use when you're reaching out to people?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I've played around with this. So I have Most of the time, I'll put the name of the product, and then I'll just say feedback. So let's say it's, I don't know, I'll make up a product. Let's say it's, we've got a Roadrunner product. I'll be like, Roadrunner feedback. And then inside of it, I'll just say like, hi John. You may remember me, I met you at conference X, and you said you're indicated in more research. I've got an opportunity coming up next week or 2 weeks out. It should only take 30 minutes of your time. You can do it from your desk. If you're interested, let me know, and I'll leave it at that. Then I'll generally CC if there's an account manager, so they're aware. The other thing though is, because my volunteer database has grown, I want to make sure that I'm keeping, maybe the admin at the company in the loop if I'm reaching out, so that it's very transparent. Then, if they reach back, I'll actually send them a link to like Calendly, or I've used like Doodle.com that has like a breakdown where they can choose their own time. Because I'll generally block off like a day. I'll say, oh, I'm going to do usability testing from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on this date. So then I'll send them a link, and then they can choose the time that they want to. But I won't send them the link to the calendar unless they respond to it. Because I don't want to be like over presumptuous, like, oh yeah, I know you're going to test with me, and then I never get a click on the link.
But you have had face-to-face contact with them initially?
I have, yeah, generally. If I haven't, I will try to then make one of the account reps make kind of a warm introduction, if possible. But for the most part, everyone on my volunteer list has been through either met me or someone on the team. So then there's kind of a step in a good direction. Yeah, hi.
Hi. When you said that you reach out to them like a week or two ahead of time, is that your typical time frame?
That's what I'm shooting for. Yeah, about a week or 2 weeks ahead of time, if possible. If it's something where, because most of the time, depending on your organization, if you're doing sprints, methodology, agile, or you're doing waterfall, you generally know when feedback has been planned. But if it's like a last minute thing, I'm still available to go out to the database and say like, hey, we have a last minute opportunity, and I'll just say like last minute. I'll say, sorry, last minute. But for the most part, my rule of thumb is giving a little bit of like a week or 2 weeks ahead of time. That way, one, the account reps are familiar with it. A lot of times the customers, it can get lost in their junk or their spam, or sometimes I've had it where they are just out of the office. So, if I give them that kind of those 3 or 4 days, business days, most of the time they will respond. And then also, their schedule is so packed, most people that I know is most people's I'm contacting, their whole week is already booked up. So that generally 2 weeks out, it's a little clearer. Like, oh yeah, I think I should have time. And that's why I may get a cancellation at the last minute, but for the most part, yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I'll try to do that, and that's why I'll try to get like a floater or somebody that's available. If not, then I'll make sure I'll reach back to them a couple days before and say, hey, we've already reached our max limit. I'll put you on the list next time.